Hello guys, welcome to Dr. Night Stare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. Eleanor had booked the trip because she thought that's what good parents did. She hadn't been a good parent up until that point, at least, not by her own accounting. She worked too much. She missed things. She answered emails while her children talked to her. Somewhere along the way, she decided that presence could be substituted with planning, that a properly booked experience could stand in for time. The resort was called Coral Reef Retreat, friendly, ocean-themed. The kind of place designed to feel exotic without ever being unsafe. Everything under one roof. An indoor lagoon play area, arcades, and upscale dining hall. No weather, no surprises. That was the promise. Her children were filled with excitement when they arrived. Wristbands snapped on, towels slung over shoulders. The air inside was damp and loud, humming with artificial daylight and the echo of screaming children. Water thundered through twisting plastic tubes overhead like veins. Music pulsed nonstop, cheerful to the point of aggression. Eleanor counted her children constantly at the lagoon. 1, 2, 3. Then one of the numbers didn't answer. At first, Eleanor didn't panic. She told herself Leo was in line for a slide, temporarily invisible in a place designed to scatter children. Minutes passed. She called his name. Casually, then louder. Michael scanned the wave pool, irritation flickering across his face. "He's fine," he said. "He wanders," they told staff. Then security. Then a manager whose smile never quite slipped, even as her radio crackled nonstop. The park didn't stop for them. It absorbed them and kept moving. After an hour, the police arrived. That was when the guilt turned physical. The questions came in loops. What was he wearing? When did you last see him? Does he wander? Eleanor answered until her voice sounded like someone else's. They found him near the end of the day. Leo was sitting alone on a bench in a service corridor, wrapped in a towel too big for him, feet swinging. A janitor, Mr. Davies, stood nearby, holding a clipboard he wasn't writing on. "He wandered back here," Mr. Davies said calmly. "I kept an eye on him." Leo looked at Eleanor like she'd interrupted something. "He said it's quieter," Leo told her, "and that people don't get lost back here." The police thanked Mr. Davies. The police thanked Mr. Davies. The manager apologized. Everyone wanted the story to end. Eleanor wanted it to end too. They thought about checking out, but Michael reminded her why they were there, so Eleanor agreed to stay. The next day, it got worse. They were at the lagoon when the first child threw up. A boy near the edge of the lazy river, sudden and violent. Parents pulled their children away, embarrassed, annoyed. Another child gagged near the stairs. Then another, it spread in clusters. A lifeguard blew a whistle too long. The music cut out mid-song. Lights dimmed, then surged back to full brightness. A voice came over the loudspeaker. "Attention guests. For your safety, please return to your rooms immediately. We are initiating a temporary health protocol." Employees appeared everywhere at once, smiling too hard, guiding traffic away from exits. In the elevator, Lily leaned against Eleanor, glassy-eyed. "I feel weird," she said. Their room smelled like carpet cleaner and chlorine. The door closed behind them with a sound Eleanor didn't like. Another announcement followed. "Please remain in your rooms. Do not open the door. Do not use your phones. We will contact you." The children got worse. Fever, vomiting, confusion. Michael paced. "We need to leave." "They told us to stay," Eleanor said. "That's not law." The arguing started quietly, then sharpened. Every decision felt like an indictment. Who had wanted this trip? Who had ignored what signs? A knock came once. Not again. Late that night, it came back. "It's Mr. Davies," a voice whispered, from earlier. Eleanor recognized him immediately. "They're not opening this floor again," he said. "They're waiting." "For what?" Michael asked. "For it to burn out," the janitor said. "One way or another." Eleanor didn't trust him. She didn't trust the resort either. He showed them a map. Service tunnels, utility passages, a way out that wasn't meant for guests. "You leave now," he said, "or you don't leave." The children whimpered behind her, fevered and small. Eleanor unlocked the door. They followed him through hallways that smelled like bleach and rust, past doors marked authorized personnel only. The noise of the park faded. Water rushed through pipes overhead, steady and patient. They exited through a loading bay into cold night air. Eleanor didn't look back. 2 days later, a news alert finally came through. A viral outbreak, rapid onset, high fatality rate. Nearly everyone still inside Coral Reef Retreat had died. The article mentioned containment failures, delayed evacuation, an investigation. It did not mention them. Sometimes Eleanor thinks about the booking confirmation, the photos, the lies she told herself about what good parents did. Sometimes she thinks about the janitor, Mr. Davies, and how calm he was. That was the last time they took a family vacation. There won't be another. The morning of the lottery found Caleb hollowed out. He pushed away his favorite breakfast, fluffy pancakes, rich maple syrup, a glass of orange juice, and a warm pastry. With a sigh, he scraped the plate into the trash. The memory of the night before, a twisted tradition in Willow Creek, hung heavy in the air. For one night, the town's teenagers were permitted to unleash their wildest impulses, free from the threat of arrest or consequence. Every 18-year-old drank themselves to oblivion, acquiring tattoos they promised not to regret. Last year, Thomas Miller had drunk lighter fluid. The year before, Sarah Astor had been found lifeless on her tire swing. Caleb switched on the television, slumping deep into the worn cushions of the old couch, seeking solace in forgotten kids' shows. But nostalgia offered no escape from the relentless churn of his thoughts. He found himself drawn to the family liquor cabinet, pulling out a bottle of whiskey. The first sip made him gag, but he forced down half the bottle, the burn a welcome distraction. Another retch escaped him, tears stinging his eyes. He wondered if this was the moment he would finally break. He hadn't slept, eaten, or bathed in days. Food turned his stomach, and sleep brought a dangerous flicker of hope he couldn't afford. For a fleeting moment, he knelt, a silent surrender to what felt like an inevitable fate. He waited for the crack, for the collapse, for the release. It never came. When the piercing wail of the beginning siren sliced through the air, signaling all 18-year-olds to the Grand Plaza, Caleb stood. A profound numbness had settled over him, dulling every sensation. He grabbed his backpack and left the house. Agnes, the neighbor from next door, intercepted him the moment he locked the door. Caleb, her voice was an unsettlingly saccharine facade. She held up the day's newspaper, which, as always, displayed the names of all the eligible teens on its front page. She angled it deliberately, ensuring every name was visible. "Sweetie, are you drunk?" Normally, Caleb would tolerate her. But today was not normal. Today, there was a 1 in 50 chance he would die. "Yes." Caleb spun to face her, a wide, unsettling smile stretching his lips. "Yes, Agnes, I am completely fucking smashed it." He climbed into his car, started the engine, and leaned out the window. "By the way, I hate your stupid bob haircut, and yes, when I was 8, I did kick my ball through your window." He braced himself for a lecture, but Agnes's lips merely curved into a cruel smile. "I hope you're chosen today, honey bun," she purred, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. She raised the newspaper higher, revealing his name circled in glittery marker. "Have fun!" Caleb bit back a retort and sped away. She wasn't worth the wasted breath. "Hey!" Caleb jumped, his bad mood instantly evaporating. Liam, his boyfriend, was already in the passenger seat, a faint smile on his face. Caleb tried not to meet his eyes, to avoid that pathetic, stupid, hopeful grin. "That was me, remember?" Liam said, his smile widening. "I kicked the ball through her window, I know." Liam didn't press for more conversation. Instead, he reached out, taking Caleb's hand and squeezing it tightly. Caleb returned the pressure. When they arrived at the Grand Plaza, 2 distinct lines were forming, one for boys, one for girls. The lottery itself cared little for gender identity, but tradition dictated separate cues. Caleb found himself gently pushed into the line of boys alongside Liam. A stranger next to him reached out and squeezed Caleb's hand. Caleb didn't know if the gesture was for him or for the stranger, but he appreciated the shared comfort. A suited man ascended the stage, his presence radiating an aura of immense wealth. His suit alone was likely worth more than their entire town. "Welcome," his lips split into a practiced grin, "to our annual body lottery. 3 bodies will be chosen for immediate assimilation. As always, parents will receive generous compensation. Let's begin the draw." The body lottery was a grotesque manifestation of pure greed. Wealthy elders, clinging to life, used their ill-gotten fortunes to purchase more years, inhabiting youthful bodies, perpetuating their ruinous influence on the world. Caleb couldn't bear to watch the names tumble within the spinning ball. He ducked his head, feeling utterly suffocated. Liam Hemlock? The name struck Caleb like a wave of ice water. "No," he whispered, but Liam was already moving forward, compelled by an unseen force. Caleb screamed, but he was violently dragged back, held fast by a firm grip. "No!" Liam stepped onto the stage, his face pale and trembling. He was forced to his knees, his head yanked back as a woman in a pristine white uniform pressed a glowing blue needle into his temple. Liam's eyes rolled skyward, his body going limp. For a heartbeat, a desperate, agonizing hope ignited within Caleb. Maybe he was fighting it. Maybe. Liam's body suddenly jerked, then stood upright, a wide, vacant smile spreading across his face. Caleb vomited all over himself. After the lottery concluded, Caleb walked home in a daze. He consciously pushed all thoughts of Liam from his mind. When they threatened to surface, a primal scream would escape him, a desperate need for the medication he'd long abandoned. He succeeded in not thinking about Liam until his senior year of college. He was walking home late, exhausted and barefoot, after a night out. 2 steps into an alleyway, he heard footsteps behind him. "Hey, asshole," a voice slithered, a nightmare prickling at the back of Caleb's brain. He didn't turn around, he kept walking. "I'm fucking talking to you." Caleb catapulted into a run, but it was too late. Ice-cold hands grasped the back of his head, yanking him backward. A shadow loomed over him. Something sharp and cruel plunged into his stomach. A warm wetness bloomed, spreading rapidly, yet Caleb didn't cry out. He dropped to the ground, allowing himself to break. It was his face. Liam's body was a terrifying sight, pale and unrecognizable, covered in crude tattoos and cigarette burns. His right eye was gone, replaced with a cold glass orb. His teeth were sharpened, perfectly cut, unnaturally white. His remaining eye was wild, frenzied, the whites yellowed at the edges. Caleb saw years of drugs and drinking etched into the altered form of his love. "Sorry, bro," the figure muttered, dropping the knife. He flicked a lighter, his face momentarily illuminated by a warm orange glow. "You won't ignore me again." Caleb bled out against the unforgiving concrete as the figure stumbled away. He closed his eyes, darkness spreading across his vision. He didn't see the figure suddenly drop to his knees. He didn't hear the footsteps returning. He didn't hear the voice, caught in a desperate sob. He didn't hear the strained cry, fighting for control. "I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still." Arthur, a man adrift in the afterlife, felt a profound confusion. It seemed the celestial powers were still deliberating his fate. Sophia, the Divine Mother, was not as Arthur had pictured. She was serene, with eyes like ancient wisdom, but lacked any traditional adornment or flowing locks. It was she who piloted the spectral train. For what felt like an eternity, perhaps 5 or 6 cosmic weeks, the train had traversed an endless swirling mist and cosmic dust. There were no celestial way stations, no refreshments, no harmonious hymns. Just 2 immortal beings, Sophia and Malachi, locked in a timeless debate, and the featureless expanse stretching into infinity. The first few weeks were marked by a suffocating silence. Arthur had tried to question his predicament, but they seemed utterly oblivious to his presence. Midway through the 4th week, Malachi, the adversary, finally broke the quiet. "So, Divine Mother, what's the ultimate plan? My domain, or yours?" A subtle sigh escaped Sophia, her oceanic gaze reflecting in the polished surface of the train's control panel. The very air around them vibrated with the silent power of her displeasure. We have discussed this many times, Malachi. The decision rests with me, and only when I deem it time for a decision. Malachi rubbed his temples, a wave of palpable irritation radiating from him, and Arthur felt the temperature in the compartment climb several degrees. You always get to make the final call, don't you, Great One? You never let me steer these things, he grumbled, leaning back and lacing his fingers behind his head. He, too, was not as Arthur had imagined. Malachi was simply a man, albeit one consumed by a simmering agitation, resting his feet casually on the train's console. In his profound confusion, Arthur had almost forgotten his own ability to speak. Excuse me, I truly apologize for asking, but what exactly is happening here? Neither of them acknowledged his presence for what felt like hours, until, at last, Malachi spoke again. It would be far better for everyone, mortal, if you kept your thoughts to yourself. Sophia responded, her voice resonating with a quiet fury. Do not speak to my child in such a manner. This was his life. He has every right to understand. Malachi chuckled, a sound like distant thunder, causing the train carriage to tremor again as the heat intensified to uncomfortable levels. My child, he mimicked, his life. Ha! The life you crafted, that he then chose to lead in transgression. We both know his deeds. Why can you not accept the inherent flaws in your creations? Sophia subtly adjusted the train's climate control, and the oppressive heat instantly dissipated. I cherish them precisely because of their imperfections, a truth you could never grasp. This prompted a hearty, convulsive laugh from Malachi. What were this one's transgressions again? Tell me, mortal in the observation car, what did you do with the mother's gift? Arthur's face flushed crimson, and the weight of an entire world settled upon his chest. Well, Arthur led a virtuous life, Sophia interrupted, her voice firm. Imperfect, yes, but fundamentally righteous. Malachi snorted. There she goes again. You led a good life. You can never concede when someone was truly wicked to their very core, can you? Sophia gripped the controls tighter, the metallic console groaning under her grasp. A subtle hum of raw energy filled the compartment. Ah, yes, Malachi needled. The legendary wrath. What will you do? Derail the train? Sophia did not derail the train, a mercy Arthur felt more profoundly than any just punishment. Silence descended upon the carriage once more, and Arthur watched the void beyond. The track, an ethereal glow, seemed to radiate a violent heat as the train pressed onward. It never curved, never meandered, just a straight path into the unknown. Arthur couldn't help but notice there were no emergency exits or means of egress from the carriage. As if sensing his thought, Sophia replied, It is to prevent you from seeking oblivion. There is no afterlife if you choose that path. No luminous plains, no churning abyss, nothing. Only eternal void. So what is the purpose of all this? Arthur asked, a tremor in his voice. If I could simply cease to exist, why are you debating my destination? This brought a faint smile to Sophia's lips as Malachi answered for her. Because, my naive mortal, this is our little game. Your game? To argue whether I belong in luminous planes. Not just the luminous planes, Sophia clarified. We are debating your placement in general. Yes, that is an option. But so is the churning abyss. So is reincarnation. Or, if it is decided, I could return you to the mortal realm in your original form. This comment puzzled Arthur. Back to the mortal realm? It seems a little late for that. Malachi turned fully towards Arthur in his seat, his eyes blazing with an ancient fury. Child, you are on a spectral journey with the very embodiment of darkness and the Divine Mother herself, and your first inclination is to question her authority? Arthur promptly fell silent. After a long while, Sophia spoke again. Never dismiss the impossible, Arthur. Yes, you are beyond mortal life. But who is the one who grants life itself? Oh, come on, Malachi whined. Give it a rest. We understand. You created humanity. Do not speak to me in such a manner. Remember, Malachi, though I engage in this deliberation with you, I still hold the power to end all of this without a moment's hesitation. Arthur truly was in the presence of the Almighty. As he absorbed this revelation, Malachi finally spoke again after a few tense moments. All right, fine. A sensitive topic. Let us not flood the cosmic sea again. A great one? Sophia merely grumbled, and the train surged forward with increased speed. Yep, there she goes. One of her little tantrums. You might not know this, but a cosmic tremor just rippled through a distant galaxy because of that. Enoch! Sophia's voice thundered. There is no need to stray from the matter at hand. Our subject is in this carriage with us at this very moment, and instead of behaving like the primordial being you are, you struggle to act better than a mortal. Malachi sat silently. Arthur noticed that, at Sophia's outburst, the scenery outside shifted. The track took its first gentle curve, and Arthur felt a subtle pressure against his side. Then, before his very eyes, he saw the first sign of life, an ancient oak, its branches laden with glowing fruit, paralleling their path. An oak, Arthur exclaimed. Why is there an oak, an ancient oak, bearing the fruit of life? A symbol of the boundless growth and renewal I seek to uphold. With a snort and a sigh, Malachi simply curled up in his seat, announcing, Her symbolism is endless. You two talk, I'm taking a nap. Arthur thought he was joking. But after about 15 minutes, the sound of rhythmic snoring rumbled through the carriage. I do not usually permit him this indulgence, but I believe he is struggling. He always does. He does not perceive in you what I perceive. You keep saying that, Arthur ventured cautiously. I truly hate to sound like I'm questioning you, as the other guy would put it. But why? Why seek this dominion over mortals? He genuinely wanted to know. All his memories of his earthly life were absent, replaced by this journey with these two. Sophia's gaze remained fixed on the track. The ancient oak, its glowing fruit shimmering, traveled alongside them, its branches still and serene, as Sophia considered her answer. Because, despite everything you may believe, I love you. I desire your happiness. Malachi and I may engage in this deliberation, but humanity remains in my heart. Mortals were my most cherished creation. Malachi abhorred that, and I grieved when his disdain for you led him to act arrogantly, blasphemously. Arthur knew this tale. He had heard variations of it throughout his life on Earth. So you truly just cast him out? He inquired. There was a sudden, jarring jolt of the train, and Malachi's head struck hard against the observation window, rousing him briefly. Can you watch where you're going, please? Can you watch where you're going, please? We have a long journey ahead, and I'd prefer to actually rest during some of it. Sophia smiled, lovingly, loosening her grip on the controls. She then placed a hand on Malachi's shoulder, proclaiming her awareness of her actions. You simply close your eyes, champ. Let the two of us speak. Malachi recoiled at her touch before growling. What exactly do you think I'm trying to do here? Before long, that familiar, exaggerated snoring filled the carriage once more, and Sophia spoke again. You know, he is right about some things. I hate to admit it, I truly do. But when he is right, he is right. Arthur felt his blood run cold at this comment. Right about what? Sophia maintained a stern expression as she spoke. About you. I believe you knew that. About me? I don't even recall my life. You know that all I can remember is this journey, right? He felt the foolishness of the question the moment it left his lips, yet Sophia responded anyway. Many mortals do. Do you believe you are the only one experiencing this journey? We are omnipotent, Arthur. We are everywhere and nowhere at once. But what does that have to do with him being right about me? I don't fully understand. And also, if you are, Sophia, the Divine Mother, why is there an argument to begin with? Do you not control the entire cosmos? Do you believe everyone is inherently good, child? Do you believe everyone is a saint? Well, of course not. Some beings are evil. I comprehend that. I will share a secret. Everyone is both. All virtuous beings possess darkness. All malevolent beings possess light. In that moment, Arthur could only think to ask one simple question. Which one was I? What followed was only the rhythmic hum of the train's ethereal engine and the cosmic wind beating against the carriage frame as they continued their journey. Suddenly, Arthur felt his mind begin to pulsate. A migraine clawed its way directly to the center of his awareness, and he felt a wave of nausea. He became increasingly disoriented. A profound sensation began to bloom in his mind. Like a shroud of countless memories permeating his soul, all his earthly recollections surged back at once. His wife, the paternity test, the descent into drink, the addiction to drugs, and more than anything, the murders. For the first time, the branches of the ancient oak began to shake violently, and glowing fruit scattered into the void. Malachi awoke with a yawn, stretching his arms towards the ceiling as he grunted. "Which one do you think you were, mortal?" he asked with heavy sarcasm. Abruptly, the environment outside shifted. No longer was it an expansive plain of nothingness. What were once swirling mists were now miles upon miles of churning abyss, choked with shadow and tormented whispers. Screams, both ancient and fresh, could be heard from beyond the carriage's threshold, and the sickening scent of something metallic and stale crept in through the air vents. Malachi's face glowed with cruel excitement in the infernal light, whereas Sophia seemed to be silently weeping. Again, Malachi spoke, this time his voice holding far greater power than it had previously. "We both know where he belongs. We both know there is no redemption for him." Sophia eased her grip on the controls, and Arthur felt his heart begin to pound against his ribs. "No, no, please, you cannot do this. It was a mistake. I was foolish. Oh, Divine Mother, I was so foolish. Please, please understand. Sophia, you know my heart. You know I was good. Remember what you said?" The train moved slower and slower, to the point of almost stopping. All Arthur could do was beg. "Please, Sophia, please save me. I know I made mistakes, and I am sorry. I am so, so sorry. Please, you must forgive me." Before his tear-filled eyes, Malachi erupted into a pillar of dark fire in the passenger seat. He became more a force of primordial chaos than a discernible person. "Must have? Amused have? Lict have? Listen to me, and listen well. You are the mortal. Every move you have ever made is because of one of us. We do not must have to do absolutely anything." Arthur fell back in his seat, sobbing silently. He could not believe this was happening. He refused to believe it. In the echoes of screams outside the carriage, he heard his own voice, his own furious words blaring through his head like a siren. The train rolled to a stop, and a grim acceptance began to pour over him. His daughter wasn't his. His wife wasn't his. Control wasn't his. He wasn't defending himself, but a man could only endure so much. When the control slipped, everything went gray. The air in the carriage was boiling. Sophia looked on with an expressionless face as Malachi spoke. 3 lives. That is how many you extinguished during your time on Earth. 4 if you count your own. Arthur didn't argue. All he could do was apologize. "I'm sorry, I understand entirely. This is where I belong. This is where I belong. This is where anyone in my position would belong. I made mistakes as a man, and all I can do now is beg for forgiveness and await wrath." "You are right about one thing, Divine Mother," Malachi remarked. "This one certainly has a way with words." Arthur couldn't help but feel a fleeting pang of pride. Pride soon turned to overwhelming relief when the train began to move again, prompting Malachi to become infuriated. "WHO, what are you doing? You were so close. Just open his damn door already." Sophia did not answer him. The train continued lurching forward, and the only sound from within was that of its engine as well as Malachi's seething gasps. Instead of replying to Malachi's remarks, Sophia addressed Arthur instead. "This is why I have not decided whether or not you belong here. You accept. You strove for every tomorrow to be better than you were yesterday. That is what makes a virtuous man, Arthur. I know that you were good." Arthur felt the wave of profound love crash over him. The feeling was so intense that it brought him to fresh tears. "I was not good. I killed a child. I killed a mother. I killed a man who wronged me." Malachi bellowed with laughter at this comment. "He admits it. You are hearing it from his own mouth, and this train is still moving. Why?" The outburst was frightening, but the comfort Arthur felt in that moment left him unshaken. Sophia remained silent, and while Malachi continued to ramble, Arthur stared out the window. It just felt right in that moment. He watched as the scenery slowly changed. No longer were they traversing a demonic abyss of screams, darkness, and churning shadows. The track was now leading them into a magnificent expanse of luminous plains, and he could see thousands of crystalline structures peppering the landscape, divided by long, rushing rivers of pure light. The closer they got to the other side, the angrier Malachi became. "You will not do this. You will not show mercy on this thing. Your brainchild, this murder. No, you will not do this again." Just as the front of the train was passing into the other side of this new reality, Malachi exploded into erratic, uncontrolled flames again. Arthur could feel them gnawing at his face. It felt like his eyes were melting out of their sockets, like the skin on his face was falling off the muscle and dripping into his lap. With a roar so monstrous it cracked every window in the vehicle, Malachi lunged over Sophia in the driver's seat, snatching the controls. The ancient oak splintered into millions of glowing fragments, and the train began to swerve violently. The next thing Arthur remembered was a blinding white light exploding in his vision. He could feel nothing. He thought he'd lost his senses until a sound began to etch itself into his brain. A beep, 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 beep. Slowly but surely, his senses began to return, and nurses flooded the room. He tried to move, but his wrists had both been handcuffed to each side of the hospital bed. Following the nurses, 2 police officers marched into the room, hands on their hips. One of them, a tall man with indoor sunglasses and a stern mustache, barked at him. "You thought you could escape justice that easily, Mr. Meeks. Not on my watch." Arthur stared at him blankly. "But I was just... how did I?" The other officer, another tall man with a string bean build, interrupted him. "You're going under the jail, buddy. You're gonna rot in hell for what you did." As Arthur recalls this from his cell, he still holds one truth, and that truth is that he agrees with him. The raven was a persistent shadow, its ominous presence marking Eleanor's weekly ritual. No matter when she arrived, dawn, dusk, or the dead of night, it was always there, an unblinking sentinel awaiting her. Perched on the granite marker of young Ethan's grave, its dark form stark against the moon-kissed stone, the bird watched. It rarely made a sound, no chirps or coos, just the silent, piercing gaze of that black, foreboding creature. This evening, Eleanor brought lilies, their white petals a symbol of solace she desperately craved. She placed the bouquet on the neatly trimmed turf, settling beside them. The raven subtly shifted, adjusting its perch for an unimpeded view of her now lowered posture. Eleanor met its gaze, a challenging arch to her eyebrows. It responded with an unnerving, palpable glare. Eleanor sighed, turning her attention to the inscription. "My apologies for the delay this week, Ethan. Work has been relentless. Forgive me, that's hardly appropriate given the circumstances," she murmured, a dry, bitter chuckle escaping her lips. She unconsciously wiped her clammy palms on her jeans, a nervous habit that always resurfaced at this sight. She wanted to blame the raven, but deep down, she knew the truth ran deeper. Anyway, nothing particularly new to share. My sister, Maria, is expecting another one, so I'll have a new niece or nephew soon. That charming little bakery downtown that made those incredible croissants closed its doors, a shame. And work is, well, it's work. Hectic, but stable. Her voice trailed off. She gently placed her hand over Ethan's name, carved into the cool granite. "I'm so truly sorry, Ethan. I wish you were still here." Her eyes began to sting, and she hastily brushed away the nascent tears. Taking a shaky breath, she rose, brushing specks of earth from her trousers. A soft flutter of wings drew her gaze back to the raven, its head cocked, observing her. "I know I was late," she addressed it, her voice barely a whisper. "My apologies." It finally broke its silence, letting out a harsh, guttural croak that echoed through the quiet cemetery. It flared its wings, a clear, furious gesture that seemed to convey its disbelief in her sincerity. Eleanor inhaled sharply. The raven's stare felt like a brand on her very soul, a sensation that had become a constant companion since the day it first appeared. It had started 5 years ago. Driving home late one evening along a winding country lane, a heated argument with her boyfriend Mark, still replaying in her mind, Eleanor hadn't been paying attention. She hadn't seen him. A figure had stepped out, too abruptly, into her path. His face turned towards her, eyes wide with dawning horror as her headlights consumed him. It all unfolded in a blur. The sickening thud of impact was a sound that would forever haunt her nightmares. She'd instinctively swerved, but it was futile. She knew, with chilling certainty, that she had run him over. Panic seized her. She was on the cusp of a major promotion, a partnership at her law firm. News of such an incident would undoubtedly shatter her career aspirations. So, she fled. She sped away into the night. Once she reached a dimly lit roadside diner a few towns over, she made an anonymous call to emergency services, reporting an accident. That entire night, she compulsively watched the news, praying that someone had found and helped the poor young man. His name, she learned, was Ethan. He'd reportedly been leaving a college party, taking a shortcut home through the fields after having too much to drink to drive. He was just a young man, a promising university student, just accepted into a prestigious medical program with a full scholarship. And Eleanor, distracted and careless, had ended his future. The raven appeared the very next morning. As Eleanor left her condo for work, it was perched on a lamppost outside, its eyes fixed on her. Its gaze was an unspoken accusation. "I know what you did." She dismissed it as a morbid coincidence, her conscience already a gnawing beast, and hurried on. But the raven followed. To work, to restaurants, to the grocery store, the raven was always there, waiting. It would trail her, its harsh caws and agitated squawks often loud enough to draw curious glances from passers-by. The only respite Eleanor had painfully discovered was her weekly pilgrimage to Ethan's resting place. Each visit she brought fresh blooms, and she spoke to Ethan about her mundane life, sharing tidbits about his family she'd gleaned from old news reports and local gossip, offering him updates she knew he'd never hear. This ritual, she found, seemed to keep the raven's relentless haunting at bay. It had been 5 years, and she hadn't missed a single weekly visit to Ethan. When she failed to appear, the raven would resume its relentless pursuit. It always found her. Eleanor knew the price of true freedom, a confession, an admission of guilt. That, she was certain, would finally make it stop. But she just couldn't. She would visit Ethan every week for the rest of her life, if that was the penance required. As long as the ever-present guilt didn't consume her entirely first. Whenever Alara visited her Nana Maeve at the old farmhouse, a familiar chill always settled over her. It wasn't the autumn air, but the silent, unblinking gaze of the porcelain figures that populated every nook and cranny. "Nana," Alara would often ask, her voice barely concealing her unease, "why do you keep these ghastly dolls all over the place?" Nana Maeve would always sigh, a well-practiced sound. "I've told you countless times, child. They've been with me since I was a slip of a girl. And they're not ghastly. Back in my day, every young lady dreamed of owning one." Alara found it impossible to believe. Their pallid faces and eyes that seemed to swallow all light were the stuff of nightmares, not childhood dreams. "But why not something cheerful?" she'd press. "Like those bright, modern playthings? These look like they're hiding dark secrets." Nana Maeve's lips would tighten into a firm line, her silence a clear dismissal. Later that evening, in the dusty guest room, Alara found herself staring at one of the dolls perched on the dresser. Its glass eyes, usually vacant, seemed to hold a flicker of malevolence. She watched, her heart thrumming, as it slowly, deliberately winked. A grotesque smirk stretched across its porcelain features before vanishing as swiftly as it appeared. Alara knew. This wasn't the first time. Years ago, that very doll had orchestrated a chaotic scene in the kitchen, spilling ingredients everywhere and letting Alara take the blame. She was tired of their silent pretense. Lunging forward, Alara snatched the grinning doll from its perch, gripping its slender neck. "Enough of this charade," she hissed. "Prove you're alive, right now, or you'll be missing a head." A sharp, agonizing pain erupted on her hand. She recoiled, staring at the livid bite mark already swelling on her skin. "So, that's how you want to play?" Alara snarled, rage overriding her fear. With a swift, decisive twist, she tore the doll's head clean off, then hurled its headless body against the old plaster wall. A cry, piercing and chilling, echoed through the room. Alara gasped, a jolt of pain shooting up her foot. Below, a horde of dolls, previously inanimate decorations, swarmed around her ankles. They wielded miniature forks, tiny knives, and splintered wooden shards, jabbing and slashing at her. Alara unleashed a furious barrage of kicks, stomps, and swings, grabbing the tiny assailants and flinging them across the room. She retaliated with their own makeshift weapons, driven by years of simmering frustration and a sudden, primal need for self-preservation. Their fragile porcelain bodies shattered easily, their flimsy limbs detaching with each impact. The battle was brief but brutal. She stood panting amidst the carnage, not entirely surprised by the sudden, overt hostility. She had always known, deep down, that these pale horrors were more than mere toys. They had despised her as much as she had despised them, the only one privy to their sinister secret. Now, the proof lay in pieces around her. Alara knew that the memory of Nana Maeve's haunted dolls would forever brand her with an unshakable fear of their kind. It began innocently, a simple annual checkup. Emily, my partner, was always one for preparedness, meticulously planning everything. I, Mark, on the other hand, lived life with a more spontaneous spirit. We were, in our own way, perfectly matched. It was her insistence that we both undergo a routine health checkup that led us down this path. A path I've since wished, with every fiber of my being, had been mine alone to walk. But fate, it seems, is immutable, and the grim reality of cancer, undeniable. Every moment of those last months remains etched in my memory. I vividly recall the sterile chill of the consultation room, its surfaces gleaming with an impersonal sheen. Emily's hand was a fragile anchor in mine, and I squeezed it perhaps a little too tightly, a nervous habit that always made my palms damp. She had a gentle way of noticing such things, often teasing me playfully about it. Not that day, however. Dr. Caldwell's voice, calm and detached, delivered pronouncements no one ever wants to hear from an oncologist. Words like, an unprecedented case, remarkably aggressive, a novel malignancy, and defying all known biological principles. A chilling certainty settled over me. Dr. Caldwell was not merely fascinated, he was elated, thrilled by the prospect that this unprecedented affliction, consuming my Emily, might one day bear his name. I remember Emily telling me, "I don't understand, Mark. I feel fine. Better than ever." I poured all my efforts into comforting her, into alleviating her suffering. Our freezer became a shrine to her favorite frozen treats, though her appetite had vanished long before. I purchased every book she'd ever mentioned, and when her strength failed, even for reading, I procured the audio versions, playing them softly as she rested. I would carry her, gently, to the bathroom. I was with her for every arduous appointment of her new experimental chemotherapy. Dr. Caldwell insisted on her presence. It was administered in a private research facility within the hospital, a secluded wing dedicated solely to his work. She would whisper how the glowing green liquid coursing through her veins during those experimental sessions felt like 1,000 tiny blades tearing at her from within. The first medical bill arrived, a stark white envelope holding a financial assault. I remembered, with a pang of bitter irony, how buying our modest home had felt like the pinnacle of financial expenditure, a sum I was certain I'd never surpass. Before that, my most significant purchase had been a car. I was so utterly wrong. This experimental treatment threatened to eclipse the cost of our entire life savings, our home included. It was then that Emily, with a heartbreaking resolve, asked for a divorce. Her voice was thin, burdened by the thought of me inheriting the crushing debt, especially as Dr. Caldwell had just delivered his grim prognosis. She had little time left. My immediate answer was a vehement no. Not at gunpoint, not for all the riches in the world would I sever ties with her. But then she turned those eyes on me, eyes I had happily drowned in 1,000 times over, and I knew my resistance was futile. How could I ever deny her? With a heavy heart, I signed the papers. We were legally divorced. Then came the inevitable. Despite every warning, every somber preparation, the day Emily finally succumbed, I felt my world collapse with the sudden, shattering finality of a bursting balloon, or the last stunned gaze of the dinosaurs at the approaching asteroid. My existence, as I knew it, ceased. Dr. Caldwell, with an almost predatory impatience, didn't even allow my tears to dry before he began his incessant pleas. He wanted access to Emily's body, for samples, for research, for his endless, self-serving curiosity. Perhaps it was selfish, but I told him, in no uncertain terms, to go to hell. I had already secured 2 plots in a serene memorial park, a beautiful casket, and a polished headstone bearing both our names. The day after her burial, I woke to 3 missed calls from Dr. Caldwell. God, I hated that man. Now that she's gone, I can tell you the actual reason I wasn't worried about that medical debt. Today, I plan to join Emily at her resting place. In my mind, I had already experienced everything life had to offer. Without her, what purpose remained? I loaded my old pistol, secured her wedding ring, returned to me with her other belongings after her passing, and set off for the memorial park. Reaching her grave, I was met with a scene of utter desecration. The ground was disturbed as if by an explosion, the mahogany coffin shattered to splinters, and the earth revealed an empty, gaping hole where my Emily should have rested. Only one horrifying conclusion was possible. Dr. Caldwell had refused to accept my refusal. He had taken her for his research. I drove towards the medical center with a reckless abandon that, by some miracle, avoided a police encounter. Parking, I forced myself to take a slow, deep breath. Panicked rushes into hospitals always drew unwanted attention. I walked inside, deliberately calm and unhurried. My immediate goal was to reclaim my wife, to give her the burial she deserved. And, a close second, I intended to end Dr. Caldwell's life. My hand gripped the pistol in my jacket pocket, cocking it with a soft click as I slowly pushed open the heavy door to Dr. Caldwell's private office. There, in the center of the room, stood Emily. She was unnaturally pale, her form disturbingly swollen and mutated in grotesque ways. Yet she held Dr. Caldwell aloft by his throat. He thrashed wildly, his feet scrambling for purchase, but she remained utterly unmoving. "You did this to me," she hissed at him, her voice a guttural rasp. "You made me sick," he gasped out, his voice choked. "You are the next stage of human evolution. Why conquer cancer when you can become it? You'll live forever. It hurts." She screamed, and with a horrifying crack, crushed his throat. With a sudden, violent motion, she released him, and his body slumped to the floor. Then she turned her monstrous gaze towards me. "Emily," I breathed, my voice thick with disbelief and a desperate hope. You're back." She lifted her misshapen hands to obscure her face. "No, Mark, no," she sobbed, her voice raw. "I never wanted you to see me like this. I look like some kind of grotesque monster." Tears, thick and slow, welled from her eyes, and in them I saw pure terror. In that moment, a singular clarity descended upon me. I gently took her swollen, tumor-riddled hand, gripping it perhaps a little too tightly, and dropped to one knee. From my pocket, I produced her wedding ring, shining still. "Emily," I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul, "will you marry me again?" A small gasp escaped her lips, and then, slowly, she nodded. A soft sob racked her frame as she whispered, "Yes." "Perfect," I said, rising. "Now, let's walk out of here nice and slow, before anyone realizes what's happened and arrests us for murder." "They're coming in through the vents, Grandma Eleanor. It's your medication again." It was the autumn of 2009. "It's the Taliban. Grandma, The Taliban are not climbing into your attic vents in Willow Creek. My younger sister, Amelia, had met her end in Afghanistan back in 2005. Grandma Eleanor never truly recovered from the loss. If Amelia were still alive, I knew she would have been a great help. Sarah, can you please just look? I glanced at my rate help. Sarah, can you please just look? I was already running late for my evening psychology class. All right, I'll check. I pulled a stepladder over and carefully pushed up the heavy attic access panel. For some inexplicable reason, my father had reinforced it with a hefty length of lumber. I aimed my flashlight beam around the dimly lit attic space. Do you see anyone? She called up, her voice trembling. Nothing, Grandma. You're all clear. My parents lived only a few miles away, across the river, yet they rarely bothered to visit. They were, I suspected, simply waiting for her to pass. I, however, made it a point to check on her every day after my shift at the diner, before heading to class. I was living out of my beat-up car, trying desperately to rebuild my own shattered life. I'm scared, Sarah. Did you see something? She nodded, her eyes wide with a fear that was becoming all too familiar. The new medication seemed to be making the hallucinations more frequent, not less. What was it this time? I asked gently. They creep around the yard at night. Can you secure the vents, darling? Put some big screws in them? Okay, I promised. There were 3 metal vents along the side of the cottage. From the ground, they appeared perfectly fine. I had a major test that night, and time was short. I walked back inside. They're good, Grandma. I'll be back tomorrow. I love you, she whispered. Love you too, I replied, feeling a pang of guilt. She wasn't sleeping. The dark circles under her eyes seemed to deepen each day. I thought you screwed the vents shut. I did, Grandma. I heard them again last night. It was getting worse, day by day. Mom, she's really not doing well. She's old, Sarah. My mother, Brenda, said dismissively over the phone. I was on speaker. I could hear my father, Robert, in the background. Look, if you would just let me stay with her. Absolutely not. My mother's voice was sharp. My father chimed in with a scoff. The last thing Eleanor needs is some freeloader staying in her house. She can get her own damn place. Honey, you don't have to go over there so much, my mother added, her tone softening slightly, but the underlying message remained. Mom, she's your mother, and who do you think you are? Telling me how to manage my relationship with my own mother. We can't switch medications. Unfortunately, she's a rare case that has a severe reaction to the alternatives. Dr. Miller's voice was as cold and sterile as his office, but she's really not doing well. The hallucinations are constant. Sarah, this is your mother's mother. She's responsible for her. My hands are tied. You can always reach out to social services. Then they just put her in a home. Possibly. I couldn't do that to her. Sarah, be honest with me. Did you ever truly screw in those vents? Yes, Grandma, I insisted, though a familiar knot tightened in my stomach. I think you're fibbing. I'll check them again, I promised. And can you check that access panel too? I hadn't been down the hallway for days. As I peered up, I saw several small holes in the plaster ceiling. Grandma, why are there holes in the ceiling? I used a broomstick. Shuts them up, she said, her voice matter-of-fact. On her recliner, I saw a familiar glint of metal. What's that? My pistol. Why is it here? I can do what I want with it. Grandma, you can't. I'm tired of everyone telling me what I can't do. Everybody is just waiting for me to die. She suddenly yelled, her voice cracking. But when she spoke again, it was a fragile whisper. Don't act like your mother, Sarah. You're all I've got left, child. Treat me like a grown woman. I'm not crazy. Her lips quivered, her eyes welled up with tears, and her voice was on the verge of breaking. I'll make sure they're secure. What? The vents. I'll make them secure. I'm sorry I yelled at you. Pern. I methodically sunk 10 long screws into each of the 3 metal vents. I struggled a bit with the last one, the ladder precarious near an old oak tree that grew too close to the cottage. Grandma? I took pictures. Some of them are a little blurry because of the flash, but you can see. I handed her my phone. I don't need to look at them, dear. I trust you. They're secure. Thank you, she said, her smile genuine and weary. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to fix all those holes in the ceiling. Grandpa wouldn't have been happy with you running around destroying the house. She chuckled softly. No, I don't think he would have been. Shuh. I woke up in a cold sweat. Something felt profoundly wrong. I dialed Grandma Eleanor's number, but there was no answer. A creeping feeling that I had missed something vital came over me. The skin on the back of my neck prickled. The pictures. I snatched my phone from the dashboard of my car. I scrolled through the images. When I reached the last one, my heart plummeted into my stomach. The street was swarming with police cars, their lights flashing blue and red against the pre-dawn sky. I ducked under the yellow tape that cordoned off Grandma Eleanor's cottage. 2 officers immediately stopped me. I hastily explained who I was. A detective, a woman with tired eyes, walked over. You're the granddaughter? Yes. Where is my grandma? We've been trying to get a hold of your parents, Sarah. They're on vacation. Where is Grandma Eleanor? What time did you leave here last night? Around 5. Did you notice anything strange about the house? No. Nothing unusual. Neighbors told us you come and leave at the same time every day, but yesterday you were here over an hour later than usual. She's been hallucinating. She insisted that people were in her attic, so I put a bunch of screws into her vents. The detective, Detective Ramirez, looked at me gravely. I'm sorry to tell you this, but there's an individual who's been living in your grandmother's attic for some time. He'd come out at night, climb back in before morning. He was using that oak tree out back to climb in and out. He was in there when you screwed in the vents. He couldn't get out. A few hours ago, he crawled inside of the house through the attic panel. Your grandmother startled him, and then he beat your grandmother to death with that very access panel. We were trying to find some contact information for you. How did you know something was wrong? I took some pictures to prove to her that the vents were secure. I woke up just now, and I took another look at them. I handed her my phone. One picture had a glare from the flash, but if you looked closely, just barely visible in the shadows behind the vent, you could see a blurry face hiding. Detective Miller, his eyes heady with exhaustion, sat across the metal table from Arthur. The sterile interrogation room offered no comfort, just a stark backdrop to the bizarre account that was about to unfold. Miller leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on the man who claimed to have seen beyond life itself. I suppose we should begin with the most obvious question, Arthur, Miller started, his voice a low rumble. What were your motives for stealing the remains of your own parents and then attaching those things to them? Glass wings, Arthur interjected, his voice surprisingly calm despite the circumstances. They were glass wings. Miller nodded slowly. Yes, glass wings. And why? Arthur sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of an eternity. It's going to be a long story, Detective. You'll be here a long story, Detective. You'll be here a long time, Miller replied, his tone flat. Arthur let out another sigh, though this one held a different quality, almost a release. A few days ago, I had a heart attack, was legally dead for 5 minutes, 32 seconds, before they brought me back. I saw the afterlife, and it's nothing like anything we could possibly imagine. He paused, gathering his thoughts, his gaze distant. I was in a void. It wasn't black or white or even gray. It was the color you see when your eyes are closed in the absolute dark. Every part of me ached in there, a profound spiritual agony. There was this aperture, a point of pure light, glowing the color you see when you close your eyes in blinding sunshine. I could hear laughter in that light, the good kind, the sound of pure joy. But no matter how much I tried to reach it, it was always just out of my grasp. I walked around in that aimless hell for what felt like weeks. Arthur leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have a theory about this place, if you don't mind. This void, this between space, it was created long, long ago, by minds that they could never be like ours, nor we to them. There are rules to this place, ancient rules. I could feel them as they jolted me back here. Primeval laws for primeval people from a primeval god, they had to be. A system archaic, draconian, outdated before humanity even began to think. You could only get into what I'd call heaven, and I'm not sure if it would be similar to that, but I need something to compare that place to. You could bring someone dead if they were fitted with wings made from glass. They could swap from hell to heaven, or, God forbid, vice versa. I don't know if they followed all those rules, but I couldn't risk them being stuck in that void for eternity. Do you know how long infinity is, especially in that place? A shiver ran through Arthur's frame. The worst part, detective, is knowing I'll return to that fucking place eventually. I put a gun to my chin and pulled the trigger out of pure panic if that wouldn't have sent me to that hellhole sooner. He chuckled then, a dry, humorless sound as if that was the only thing left for him to do. Me too, Detective Miller said quietly, a strange, grim expression on his face. Arthur's head snapped up. What? Without another word, Miller pulled up the hem of his shirt, revealing a dark, angry scar just below his ribs. 2 weeks ago, shootout. Managed to get sent to the light. I learned a little more than you did. He grimaced, the weariness in his eyes deepening into something akin to horror. What you saw, Arthur, was two things: a waiting room for something you truly don't want to know the slightest thing about, and a mercy compared to what's in the light. Detective Miller rose from the table, his chair scraping loudly across the concrete floor of the interview room. He exited, leaving Arthur in the most disquieting quiet he had ever known.